My name is Adi, and today we've got a special guest, the runner-up of the first ever 174-player women's tour. Please welcome Elisa. Elisa, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good.
Tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I am currently a college student in my senior year. I have been playing VGC kind of on and off since 2014. I have only been to one live event, which was a SoCal MSS that I actually ended up top cutting. So I am two for two on events that I've played in, formal and informal. So that's not bad.
Yeah, that's about as good as you can get.
Yeah.
And we obviously haven't had live events in a little while, but I hope that that streak continues once we get to start playing again.
Yeah, me too.
So, as I mentioned, you got second place at the women's tour, which was really, really impressive. There were a lot of really, really strong players, and you ran through the gauntlet. So, tell me a little bit about the team that you used to get there.
Right. So this team actually has a kind of funny origin. It actually began as a Series 5 Indeedee Blimp team, which, Audie, you might be familiar with because I know you use that in World Cup or something to that effect. Um, and once I saw the rule set for Series 6, I was kind of like, okay, well, I've been playing a lot with this team, and now it doesn't have one of its main focal points, which was Indeedee, so that kind of sucks. I originally switched to Drift Thwacky. That wasn't really working out. I wasn't really sure what people were going to be running, so I kind of decided, okay, let's sort of start from scratch, and let's just think of a team that will do decently against Porygon Z because Series 6 hasn't been around for very long, but one thing that everybody was sort of afraid of at the time were Porygon Z teams, given that it's probably one of the strongest max Pokemon in this format. So I was kind of like testing and playing around with different things. One thing that I actually found to be somewhat effective against PZ teams, funnily enough, was like a strong, fast Max Quake allowing me to kind of like get the special defense of my Pokemon up on the field so they aren't like one shot by PZ. Originally, this actually came as part of a kind of gimmicky Zen mode Gaylord or Manatan team that I used as a joke in like May or June. And Darmanitan wasn't really it as far as PZ went, even with redirection support from Clefairy and its really, really good friend guard ability. So I literally went to Cerebi, went through a list of Pokemon that got like Earth Power, High Horsepower, Earthquake, what have you. And one of the Pokemon I happened to stumble upon was Hydreigon. And I took just a quick look at it. Hydreigon stood out to me because it gets some really, really good max moves in having both Max Steel Spike and Max Quake, along with Max Warm Wind. So those are three moves that are pretty strong off of Hydra that can kind of like really, really reduce the value of your opponent's max or offensive threats. And looking at its stats, I was kind of just like, well, if you put an Assault Vest on it, how bad could it possibly be? And that was the origin of this team. Once adding Hydra, the team kind of went through several different iterations. I think all of them had a Choice Spec Sylveon, which I have been using pretty much since I picked up VGC again in late spring. It just does a lot of damage. It's very good. Originally, the Azumarill was a Dracovish, but to make my Primarina matchup better, I changed it to Azu, and Banded Azu just does a ton of damage. As for Primarina, it cleanly one-shots it non-max, KOs it maxed, which caught a lot of people off guard during the tournament, so that was useful. I added Terrakion just because like Fast Rock Slide is always pretty good, especially when it's coming off of something as strong as like Life Orb Terrakion. And it was also a good max Pokemon against Porygon Z, which I later realized in testing because of both Max Quake and Max Rockfall with Clefairy. So that was pretty good. And then Talonflame was kind of just on there for Tailwind support. So that was really nice. I think I've gone through, I don't actually have the team pulled up in front of me, but I think that is how all the members were added onto it. And funnily enough, all of the Mons on the team, except for Clefairy, I had actually already used in 2015 on the same team. So that was really useful because I didn't have to get those Mons again, and they also kind of had like sentimental value, I guess, like a team that I had in high school. um, so it was really neat being able to enter the tournament with them and get a good finish.
Yeah, this does look a lot like a 2015 team. I definitely remember my 2015 team having at least like three of these Pokemon on it too. It and I actually did the exact same thing earlier today as far as going through the list of Pokemon that might be able to deal with Porygon Z, looking for something that can click Max Quake, and Hydreigon definitely one that stood out as something that hits a speed tier that
Yep.
also outspeeds the other premier attacker of the format, which is Urshifu.
Yes.
Yeah, so like Hydreigon, definitely a little bit of an unusual choice, not something that we've really seen. But now with no more Togekiss, it looks like it's significantly more viable Pokemon than it was like in Series 5.
Yes, I would definitely agree. Togekiss is the natural predator of two of the Pokemon on this team, actually, Terrakion and Hydreigon. And now that Togekiss doesn't exist, you can basically just like send out these two unchecked, especially with Friend Guard or Speed Control. So that's pretty cool.
And so one thing I noticed about the team is that it has very few protects. It has two choice items, so you're not really getting to switch moves a lot with two of your attackers. Do you think that was constraining in any way, or do you think that worked to your benefit?
Personally, I have always played with a lot of choice items, so I'm used to it. I think it definitely kind of depends on, I guess, how you like to play the game and how you kind of like position yourself in your matches. For me, having two choice, like for me, I would describe my play style as kind of like, I think opportunistic is a good word. I generally tend to play pretty safely, but when I think I can go for something, I'll go for it. And I think choice items kind of fit that because you have to get your Pokemon in very safely in order to use those choice items effectively. But it's like once you do, right, you can get off all this damage. It's just a matter of getting them on the field correctly. So for me, because I sort of had an idea of what I was doing, like with the choice attackers, that wasn't too much of a problem. Um, and also kind of the way this team works in general, like I didn't need protect on all of the Pokemon all of the time. I guess I can get into kind of the MO of how the team works right now, but basically, the way this team most effectively functions is by using Clefairy plus one of the two Maxmons. So for me, that's usually either Hydreigon or Terrakion. And basically, what you want to do is you're not trying to get like 3 KOs out of your max, like some other Pokemon want to do, such as Porygon Z, my favorite example for everything, apparently. um, you kind of want to make sure your opponent doesn't get any value out of their Dynamax turns. You're basically stalling them out by stockpiling defense boosts, stockpiling special defense boosts, using Follow Me, using Sing. Um, Occasionally, Terrakion or Hydreigon can score a KO, which is pretty neat too. And then once you kind of like have done that effectively, you're usually in a position where you can pretty safely like bring in Talonflame for speed control, or Clefairy is still on the field, and you can send in your choice mon, and they can just do a ton of damage without really ever having to protect because they will get their moves off first and just end the battle before anything moves. Kind of a long-winded explanation, but hopefully that kind of covered um, kind of how I play with this team having so few protects.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of the things I've noticed in Series 6, especially in Series 5. I think a lot of the top tier teams were running 4 or 5 different Pokemon that could Dynamax. You had like the teams with Togekiss, Excadrill, Tyranitar, and Dragonfall that all could Dynamax. And then I think both your team and Fiona's team, Fiona being the person who won the tournament overall, both really only had two Pokemon that wanted to Dynamax, and the Porygon Z teams that are so common really only have one Pokemon that wanted Dynamax. So it's interesting to see how this format has sort of changed and has really centralized around, building teams around very specific Pokemon that are very good to Dynamax, and then big damage dealers like your Sylveon and like your Azumarill and like Urshifu on a lot of teams that want to clean up games afterwards.
For sure.
So, what would you say some of the stronger matchups for the team are, and what would you say some of the weaker matchups are?
So definitely the strongest matchup for this team is kind of other like more offensively oriented teams, because basically teams like those PZ teams or teams that are really really reliant on their max to get all the KOs um, don't get any value out of their max Pokemon versus my max Pokemon. And also the two choice sweepers can really really just cleave through a Pokemon that aren't prepared to take those attacks or that try to like switch in thinking that they'll survive and then they don't. I would say the harder matchups for this team are actually teams that have a faster steel type in general. So that's like Corviknight gave me problems in testing. Durant gave me problems in Swiss. And Duraludon gave me problems in Top Cut and in the final match. So that is kind of one hard matchup that I have. Usually a steel type with opposing tailwind instead of a steel type in Trick Room because I have ways of dealing with Trick Room somewhat effectively. I got that at least. But yeah, given that I have 3 fairies on the team, you can see how a fast steel type would be an issue, especially Duraludon as Max Steel Spike sort of like nerfs Azumarill's output a little bit. Max Lightning means Clefairy can't just put anything to sleep with Sing if it's not Steel Spiked first. And obviously Steel Spike is a problem for Sylveon, which has some special defense, but it's not like you really want it to be taking a max move.
Yeah, definitely. And then one thing that I noticed that's very interesting about the team is that you have Yawn on a choice spec Sylveon. Can you tell me about that choice?
Yes. So honestly, what this came down to was that I felt like Sylveon didn't really have a good fourth move to add. The options Sylveon has to work with are kind of limited. I think it kind of came between like Shadow Ball, Psychic, or Mud Slap as far as attacking moves went. Shadow Ball obviously doesn't really synergize very well with Sylveon if it decides to max, which is probably the only instance in which you wouldn't be clicking a Fairy move or Mystical Fire. Um, Mud Slap just has like 2 little damage output, but getting Max Quake off of it is pretty funny. Because I did sometimes Max Sylveon in testing to kind of like stall out Trick Room turns, just to clarify. And then obviously Psychic, I guess it could be good against a Moongus, but again, I have Mystical Fire, which I think kind of covers that option.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if I really like care too much about getting Psychic Terrain up. Yawn actually, I never used it during the women's tour, but I did use it a few times during practice sets because it's very, very funny when you're up against a Trick Room team to just like yawn their redirector or their like Dusclops or Sweeper or something, and then it's like it's not the most effective thing you could be doing, but it is pretty funny. And having it turn into Max Guard when Sylveon maxes is pretty useful. So there's that.
Tell me about your run through the tournament. Through, I guess, yeah. Tell me about your run through the tournament.
Oh yeah, Swiss was very interesting. I was actually not expecting to get past day 1. I sort of had a lot of things going on this particular day. Between my sets, I was kind of like frantically writing like email drafts, calling people, etc. So I actually thought I was going to fold the whole tournament within like 3 rounds. I did not expect to do as well as I did. Part of it comes from the fact that I did have a very strong Porygon Z matchup. I played against 3 PZ teams in Swiss, and I pretty cleanly beat all of them. So that was very, very useful. Let's see, other notable things about my Swiss run. I kind of I kind of can't remember off the top of my head, but most of the teams that I played during Swiss were kind of other offensively oriented teams, which again, save for fast steel types, my team has a pretty good matchup against. So those games all went like fairly well. Trying to remember kind of moments from Swiss that were very interesting. I think Probably the most interesting game I played in Swiss was when somebody will-o-wisp my Hydreigon. So again, I guess another useful thing about Hydra is that because we haven't really seen it before, there's kind of like a surprise factor associated with it. If the person wasn't reading a hard switch for whatever reason, they could have thought maybe it's a physical attacker or something. And having that kind of element of surprise on your Pokemon is useful. I mean, it helped me win that game. So
Yeah, and I guess even like people don't know what item Hydreigon would run, I think most of the time, and so seeing an Assault Vest and having it live like weaker fairy type moves is probably a little surprising. And then same with Choice Band Azumarill. I don't think people have seen much Azumarill at all, so people might not know what to expect on that either. So yeah, you can definitely catch people off guard with some of these choices.
yeah, for sure. Choice Band Azu was definitely somebody that caught a lot of people off guard. They thought their Primarinas would be able to handle it. The Azumarill has enough speed EVs to outrun, I believe, base 100s and Tailwind. So frequently that meant it was faster than most Primarinas, which I don't believe have a lot of speed investment. It was very easily able to cleanly KO those. And about Hydreigon's Assault Vest, good point that completely slipped my mind when I was talking. It actually dealt with Primarinas and other kind of like Max Berrymons surprisingly well. You you do survive a lot of fairy moves if you can get like a single Max Quake up, especially with Friend Guard. Even if you don't have Friend Guard, like Life Orb, Primarinas, back Starfall off of Moonblast is only like a 30% roll to kill, which isn't ideal. Like, I definitely could have re-EV'd that before entering this tournament where there were a lot of Life Orb Primarinas, but it ended up working out okay for me still. So, yeah, definitely those are some choices that worked to my advantage during the Swiss rounds that, as you said, helped to catch people off guard.
Yeah. And then so you went 6-2 in Swiss, is that right?
Yep.
And that brought you, and you got a buy in top 32 because of your high resistance, which led you into top 16. Can you tell me a little bit about your top cut matches?
Oh boy. So the top cut matches, funnily enough, so kind of like in the sort of academic work I do, like I do a lot of research, I read a lot of like kind of boring arcane texts. And actually that skill set of being able to quickly parse through and absorb like large amounts of information very much came in handy for my top cut matches. Once I saw who I was playing against in top 16, Sarah Ann, who is like a prominent streamer and has like a lot of kind of like videos and tweets out, I decided, okay, well, I have no idea what she's running. I don't really want to go into my top 16 match completely unprepared, so I'm going to do as best as I can. I was actually able to figure out at least half of her team, I think, from a single tweet that she made about her Swiss run, where she said she missed like a high horsepower. That gave me enough info to guess, okay, so there's definitely some kind of ground type on this team. Other tweets she made as well kind of factored into this, I should add. She tweeted about using Delmise, so I knew that was going to be there. Delmise suggested a Trick Room Pokemon, so probably Dusclops. It seemed likely that because Edu helped her make the team, which he also revealed, that there would be a Steel type on there because as far as I know, that's like kind of how he functions. So I was able to guess correctly a ground type, a Steel type, Delmise, Dusclops. She also played with a team on her stream that seemed very similar to that: Delmise, Dusclops, Volcarona, Duraludon, Primarina, and one other thing I'm blanking out on right now, actually. She led Volcarona Dusclops every single time, so going into my top cut match, I was like, okay, I have a plan for Volcarona Dusclops. Come to top cut, the Volcarona changed into a Grimmsnarl, but my original plan still went fine. Like everything I had flowcharted basically went identically to what happened in the first round. So that was very, very helpful because being able to kind of like cleanly get that game one in your favor was extremely helpful, made me feel kind of more comfortable going into what ended up being game 2 and 3. Game 2, she brought her Max Duraludon Grimmsnarl mode. As I said, I have problems with Duraludon, completely rolled me because I led my kind of typical Trick Room lead against it, Sylveon Talonflame. and Duraludon does very well against both of those, so that didn't go so well. But game three, I was able to adjust accordingly. And I definitely think that my kind of doing hard research into like what she was running based off like a single video and like a few tweets was very, very helpful. And I would say kind of like doing that research also aided me in a lot of my other top cut matches, basically. For my match with Megan, um, so I knew that she was running Durant, but what ultimately gave me an edge kind of going into that top cut match, because there was such a delay in getting the stream set up, I was able to actually figure out her entire team before going in, because as conventional wisdom dictates, Megan and Eshi use the same team. Eshi appeared on Necro's stream round one, which I watched kind of in between my sets. So I went back to Necro's stream, got info on Eshi's sets, and banked my top cut match against Megan on her Durant not having max rockfall, which I believed was highly likely because Eshi's Durant used Giga Impact as its kind of like fourth move, and it seemed unlikely that it would have like max rockfall and Giga Impact. So going off of just that kind of information, I was able to flowchart the entirety of game one, which, as you can see on the stream, worked out for me. And game two, be able to kind of like decisively say, okay, I'm going to go in with a plan. It's called using Talonflame Clefairy, clicking, sing, being annoying, just causing chaos after that first round, because I knew she probably wouldn't be expecting me to max the Talonflame, and that could definitely catch her off guard. Again, kind of like carefully watching streams and getting information also served to my advantage. In my match against Daria, I think my matches against Daria would not have gone as well for me as they did if I didn't know her Dusclops didn't have Trick Room. I think if I didn't know what her sets were, I probably would have been playing those matches around her Dusclops, like Trick Rooming the entire time, which, while it's not like a guaranteed loss or anything, you know, it can cost you, especially if you're expecting it to Trick Room and it never Trick Rooms and you're wasting your time trying to deal with it while it's like never doing the thing that you expect. Not to mention that me setting up Tailwind allowed my choice Pokemon, Sylveon, to kind of like be able to very easily clean up her team once I got that all squared away. So there's that. And then in my matches with Fiona, again, I was able to go in with a game plan. It didn't quite work to my favor because I saw her using Talonflame, Raichu, maxing Lapras a lot of the time. So I was expecting Lapras, but then she brought in Duraludon the first game as the max, and then Serena the second, which, while I knew it was an option given its moveset, as it seems like Fiona Serena's main MO is to max set up grassy terrain and then like fire off really strong like grassy glides in the late game. You know, it still got me. So those are how my top cut matches went. I would say that if I weren't able to kind of like get the information as quickly as I did in between sets and like kind of have as much time as I did to sort of plan my set versus Sarah Ann round one, that it would not have gone so well for me. I guess you could say it's kind of interesting because this process of like just gleaning things from streams is sort of like, I guess, the online COVID equivalent to like asking your friend who played like person Y, like, hey, do you remember what they were using? Like, do you have any notes? But I guess information gathering is a strategy in and of itself. And I mean, it definitely worked for me. So I would say, like, I'm not the best VGC player, but I will do whatever I can to figure out what you're running and plan against it. That's just how I roll.
Yeah, having a little bit of prep time and knowing what your opponent's using, it makes a world of difference. Just being able to game plan. The game plans that you can formulate in the 60 seconds or 90 seconds that you have in team preview are generally going to be less good than the game plans you get to formulate with, you know, even 5 minutes or 10 minutes of thought, which is why you see usually players play much better in game two than in game one.
Right.
That being said, I don't want you to take away from your own success. I think that you played really, really well the entire tournament. At least I believe that your top eight, top four, and finals games were all streamed. Is that right?
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, so you can watch Elisa play her three games. I believe it's at twitch.tv/temporal VGC. Alyssa was the host of the tournament. Um,
Yep.
yeah, and so it was a really, really impressive run. You beat a lot of really, really good players along the way, and I guess your low profile on social media might have helped you out in gathering information and not revealing information. I'll have a link to Elisa's Twitter down in the description as well. Elisa, do you have any final words?
Um, oh, actually, would you like me to explain why my player character is named Salami? Because this is something people have been asking. It could be kind of amusing.
Absolutely.
All right. So the reason why my character is named Salami is because when Sword and Shield came out, the meme of a cat carrying like a single slice of salami in its mouth, which is commonly referred to as like cat can have little a salami as a treat, was very popular. Me and all my little friends were going around saying like cat can have a little salami as a treat. Every Pokemon game, I name my character something new. Um, and I was very uninspired for Sword and Shield, so I decided to just name the character Salami. Did not think that I would be on a stream with more than like 3 people looking at my character's name and wondering why it's Salami. It's also very funny because not everyone knows my real name or like the handles that I go by on social media yet. Like people just know me as Salami. So now my name is being disseminated as like Salami or even Miss Salami, as in the case of the VR upload of my PokePaste. So personally, I'm all for it. I think it's very funny. I know there's not another Salami hanging around in VGC, so at least people will know it's me now.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was great having you. Do you have any shout outs you want to give?
Yeah, shout out to Gavin Michaels for the prep and kind of like being able or letting me like kind of bounce ideas off of him. It's always very helpful when you're team building to just have like just the one other person who will kind of like tell you yes or no or kind of like set hard lines on like whether certain mons are entirely a good idea or not. And shout out to Tub Nation for playing practice sets against me. Good to get exposure before the tournament to some other Series 6 teams. So, yeah,
Yeah. Uh, Again, congratulations on your incredible finish. Thank you so much for coming on. It was great having you.
for sure. Thank you.